For the DRB's new session, we need to elect officers. I'm going to start by asking for nominations for chair.
Nominate James Valenti for chair.
Other nominations?
Nominate Joe Bushy for vice chair.
Okay.
I second both.
Very good.
Don't need a second.
Any further?
No, I mean,
Okay.
do we need to nominate you as clerk?
Sure.
I nominate Brian Bannon as clerk.
All right, great. All right, do I hear a motion to elect James Valenti chair, Joe Bushy vice chair, and Brian Bannon clerk?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks, guys. So, before we get started, I note that we have 5 members here, and I know at least some of you in the audience know that we're generally a 7-member board, and you only need 4 thumbs up to get a decision from us. And I believe we have 2 people who are ready to hear videotape testimony, right?
That's correct.
Mr. Annis and what is Ratzel's name? I'm sorry.
Murchison.
Mr. Murchison. Yeah, right. So that's an option as well tonight, but I don't want to waste anybody's time here if they would rather be present in front of a 7-member board. We're short because we're in the middle of the vacation season, but as far as I know, we'll have 7 plus an alternate for our September meeting, which will be the 3rd Monday in September
21st.
21st.
21st. So, is there anybody out there who wants to discuss this or whether they may continue? No? Okay. Our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes from our last meeting of July 20th, 2015. Do I have a motion to do so?
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so at the DRB, we hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro and appeals of zoning administrator decisions. Procedurally, the Developmental Review Board operates on the record. Broadly, this means that we take a clear record of testimony from the applicant and any interested parties, and then issue a written decision with our findings. Applicants and members of the public should be aware that as we are on the record, this is your opportunity to comment on and provide evidence relating to an application. In the event our decision is appealed to the Environmental Court, the court will not take or consider additional testimony at its hearing, but will look at evidence from our hearings, the regulations and law, and determine if the evidence supports the findings and decision of this board. Only interested persons that participate in this proceeding may appeal a decision made by the board, so I strongly encourage any of you to speak up at this hearing. As we're on the record, we're going to ask that you affirm that your testimony will be truthful. So any applicants or people who may wish to speak to an application, if you'd please rise and raise your right hand. And repeat after me. You don't have to rise if it's any trouble, but if you raise your right hand, that's good enough for me. And repeat after me. I hereby swear affirm, or you just say I do when I'm done, excuse me. Do you hereby swear affirm that the testimony you will give in the cause under consideration will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Applicants require a majority vote of the full board to succeed. That's 4 votes out of 7. If we do not have a full board present to hear your application, then we will consider a request to continue your application to the next public hearing. And alternatively, if you have a witness, I think, present for this hearing, I think we would be comfortable taking that testimony, given we have 2 people to review the recording, and continuing it at a later date if an applicant so wished. After taking testimony, the board will close the public hearing and may vote on your application. The board will issue a written decision within 45 days of the close of the hearing. While we may vote on an application in the hearing, it is the written decision we issue that will control the timeline for appeal. It should be noted that the town of Brattleboro is a party with an interest in land development applications. The town does not have special status before this board. Documents provided to the board by the town planning department, the town attorney, or other town departments will be considered in exactly the same way as information from the applicant or any other interested parties. Mr. Bannon, has this meeting been properly warned?
Yes, it has.
Disclosure of conflicts of interest. I have a conflict of interest in the first two applications. In application 2015-78, sorry, I have a present business relationship with Mr. Tyler. And in application 2015-84, one of the people that work at my office is a principal party. My understanding is that application 2015-84 is going to be continued anyway based on a correspondence we received from their counsel. Is there anybody here who intended to speak to that application? Okay. I would entertain, while I'm still here, a motion to continue that application, and I'm just going to abstain.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? One abstention, Valenti. So that's continued. So then the only application I'm conflicting out of is our first one, 2015-178 Gould.
I would have to conflict 2015-84 also, as well,
Okay,
when it does become better.
okay. So let the record reflect that Mr. Bushy has a conflict on 2015-84. And hopefully, we're not continuing that to the 24th, we're continuing that to the September 21st, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Any other conflicts of interest tonight? Okay. Any ex parte communications? Okay, so, Mr. Vice Chair, I'll leave you to your first substitute
you.
hearing as Vice Chair.
So, 2015-78 Eli Gould for Ironwood Brand. I don't see Eli here. I see
No, I
Mr.
don't.
Tyler here. Other gentleman.
The board could review the application materials in his absence.
Have you heard anything from him? Have
I
you,
have not.
Mr. Tyler?
I haven't heard from him.
You don't know anything?
No, I don't.
Well, you want to go through it? Or should we wait until Eli's here? Quite a bit's gone on in that. Is there a change from the last time you were here?
Well, we have a resolution to the original.
That's what I thought.
What we need to do is have I don't have any objection to the permit you're doing tonight. It's just we need to make sure that the old permit is supposedly superseded,
Is terminated, right?
and Eli needs to withdraw the permit, just to satisfy the appeals court.
Mhm.
That's all.
So
I don't know what,
we can't rightly facilitate that without him here, can we?
I wouldn't think so.
I think
No.
it should really have everyone here.
Yeah.
We'll just have to continue, I guess, to the.
I mean, could we continue it to next week's? Or would that be too soon, or is that too
It
loaded?
wasn't warned.
Right, yeah, that's right. Well, it doesn't have to be warned to be continued, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I suggest we wait till later in the meeting and see if he shows up.
Yeah. Let's
Sure.
shuffle it to the end.
Okay, great.
Do we need to make a motion to do that?
I don't think so.
No,
Does anyone have any comments?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Anyone out there have any comments? You okay with that? Okay. It's Brian, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And, okay, so we already moved to move Tri-Park to September
That's correct.
formally? Okay. So next up would be Mr. Rosinski, 2015-107. You want to come over and tell us about your project? Can we assume you want to go for it with us?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
with the provision of the
Other two watching on video.
review, that's
You're right,
correct.
right. Oh, we're already down to you, James. That's
Yeah,
right.
thank
Sorry.
They'll use any excuse they can to get rid of me. So, Mr. Rosinski, could you please, well, he probably said it right before I walked in, didn't he?
No.
Depends on what you're going to say.
Tell us about your
I heard you
project.
say it. Please tell us about your project.
Okay, so my project here, I am here as the agenda states, to request a site plan and waiver of dimensional standards. I own a 3-unit rental property on the corner of Central and Washington Street, 34 Washington Street. And I have a few parking spaces on that property, which is a corner lot, and am limited by that property's various constraints. To that end, I have a couple of gravel driveway areas, parking areas, and received a notice of violation from the town and proceeded to research and come up with a plan here that I believe provides solutions that are actually improve the site plan and will provide a solution that is similar to the one that was recommended in the notice of violation that is located down the street from us here on Prospect Street. So, to go through the plan itself, I think perhaps the best in the package. I don't know if you guys have any preference at all, but simply if we go by pictures, we can look at the lot here first on the fold-out that you have. Shows a plan view of the property and can show a few of the various constraints we have here. One of the big things, the existing gravel parking area that's down in the lower right-hand corner, that parking area is, in the summertime, effectively, accommodates 4 vehicles. In the winter, it's very limiting, and the snow comes off the roof. You see the roof lines indicated on the kind of the light blue color, and that snow dumps right down on there. It has taken out 5 vehicles in the time that I've owned the property since 2004. So I recommend, the tenants strongly recommend not to park there in the winter and times in snow and ice. You just never know when the snow is going to come off. And beyond vehicle damage, I'm obviously very concerned about people being injured. The existing areas that I have, which are now, they're shown right now and as proposed grass paver parking. Those areas are currently gravel parking, and the tenants typically will utilize those areas to park. An issue, of course, is on the Central Street side, the larger parking spot you see there. There is no curb cut in that location. So I'm requesting to make a formal curb cut and add parking. So a few things, we have a distance up here that's away from the corner of the street, and the distance is 59 feet. That distance exceeds that of which is a minimum required by the town to have a parking area from the corner of a street. The parking area has been used for many years and has been there's never been any sort of conflict or issue there with other tenants, or other neighbors parking in the area, or any sort of issues with traffic.
What's the street parking situation?
Well, you can't. Yeah, they're actually on the side on the Washington Street side in front of the house. You cannot even park
Right.
on that side of the street.
That's signed right in front.
That's correct. It's signed there.
And this, it looks like it's red curb along the side there, which means no parking. Right, is it? In that picture where your truck is there?
No, that is a parking. That's parking all along that area.
Yes.
Yes, if we look at the pictures.
I
No,
thought you couldn't park up to the corner on that side because it's the corner.
I don't know. I mean, it's.
On Central?
I think I don't see it. I have never seen a no parking sign of any sort. But certainly, you want to limit how close you're parking.
Yeah, right.
Right. It is limited and limiting. We have had some accidents at the intersection in the time.
Okay.
So the other constraints on the house here, if we were to make the existing parking area longer, first we need area to put snow and plow the driveway effectively without plowing the snow into the road. You have to plow it to the south, and there's propane tanks there, and we need an adequate space not to push the snow directly up and cover the tanks, and obviously provide access for the gas company. So we were even very limited on areas that you can even put anything on this property due to the various roof lines that this property exhibits.
Now, how many spaces do you need total? Is this to get 4?
This is a total. The added spaces here, the added spaces that are being requested are 3 parking spaces. That would make it, I've put in the application, I try to make it very clear there, it's 4, an existing of 4 spaces going to 7 spaces. The caveat being that one space is just not a truly serviceable space during the winter months.
Where the BMW is in the picture?
No, that's a space in the. If we look at the pictures, okay, that's a space that would be a proposed gravel grass paver lot. Correct. But it's the space. If you look at the picture in the upper right, you see the snow ice hazard area. There's your 2 roof angles that come down, and that's where the vehicles have been damaged repeatedly. And I'm simply, instead of just trying to say that I'm going to ask for the bare minimum, I'm asking for effectively 7 spots. It's 7 spots in the summer and in times where there's absolutely no snow on the roof. It's truly 6 parking spots for the tenants. The thing that I have with my property is they are all good-sized units. It's a 2 1,300 square foot units and one 1,000 square foot unit. The tenants that I've had in my property have always been 2 working, parents typically. And when I first bought this property, my tenants were actually parking up at Price Chopper in the winters. And I just found that to be completely unacceptable, especially when one of the tenants was pregnant. I was like, this is absurd.
So the real necessity here is the winter, right?
The real necessity is the winter. That is certainly correct.
In the summer, the parallel parking along Central Street suffices. I mean, I assume that's how you get by.
I think
at the moment?
that's fair to say. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Would it cause an undue burden on the property if DRB said, yes, we're going to make an exception for these spaces, but we only want you to use them during the winter months when the street is not open to parking?
Well, I never thought about that.
That's why I ask these things.
Yeah, I think other than it being a shame to put the kind of money into a parking space and not utilize it, I think for the property itself, I don't think the property would be harmed in any way. The tenants would obviously, I would think, prefer to have off-street parking. I think, actually, one thing I would say to the neighborhood itself, one thing that would take away from the neighborhood is that area of Central Street. For whatever reason, the kids love to play in that area of Central Street. So it may take away from that, but certainly not from the property itself.
On the Central Street proposed parking, I've seen a car parked there in the past, lived in the neighborhood. You're proposing to park 2 cars there?
Yes, and I actually used to live there, and I used to park 2 full-size trucks there without a problem at all. I'm showing my truck in this picture here, which is as big as you're going to get for a typical truck, and I haven't ever had a tenant that's owned a full-size truck rent from me, but just trying to show that, The truck certainly fits well within that space. 2 trucks do fit in that space very comfortably.
So you wouldn't lose any of the garden?
No, the garden would not be lost at all. And again, with the grass pavers, that's one thing I did not mention. The product that I was led to, by the notification of that I received from the town. They referred me to a property on Prospect Street which utilized grass pavers. So I researched that a bunch, and I looked at the subject project, and I saw that they were concrete grass pavers which you fill with sand. I spoke to several engineers, also spoke to my brother who's a mason, and then through more research found that everyone preferred the product that I selected here that you have some cut sheets of. And the thing that goes back to your question on the garden is what these ultimately look like. And I think if you flip through here, you'll see that the end product is essentially a lawn. And the reason that it's able to look like that is because the grass roots are protected, and it allows the grass to continue to grow despite the vehicle traffic.
And same stuff that they used with that retreat project that came before us.
I think so. Yep.
And I was concerned about snow plowing and if it would get torn up, and it says right in the literature, that it is plowable. You need to take special consideration when plowing it, of course. It's just like any gravel driveway. But it is a plowable product, and the way it is linked together, ultimately it should be more stable for the long term. So I think your end picture is more lawn on the property.
Instead of the gravel that's going in.
That's correct. Yeah, and I spoke with Steve Barrett about this project and asked him if he saw anything that was glaring, from the town perspective, and he did not. He certainly supported the project as presented. Obviously, he doesn't have an approval in that, but I looked in every which way and form that I could, and tried to to look into it. Spoke with my closest neighbor to the project, who is Mrs. Enos, Rosalind Enos, and she was amenable to the project as well. So I feel comfortable with what is presented here. And if there's any other questions, I'd be more than happy to
I have a couple of
discuss.
concerns. The first being the car that parks in the front yard. That to me is completely out of character with the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
As I drove by, I didn't see anything else on Washington Street or Central where people parked in the front yards.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have an issue with that, and I also have a concern about having a parking space in an area where a person could be injured or damaged to the car. So to set that up as a parking space and then have it used in the winter concerns me. Those are the two areas that I do have a concern.
So I think I hear you talking about two different locations.
Yes.
If we look in the pictures here that we have, the first one that you cited is where the car is parked directly in front of the house.
Yes.
The second one being in the upper right-hand corner in the snow and ice hazard location. So I think what I heard from Mr. Valente was a question about parking in the winter versus parking in the summer. And perhaps if we had a restriction on parking in the front yard in the summer, or excuse me, if we had a restriction on parking in the front yard in the summer, and that space was only used during the winter when you had the snow and ice hazards, that may be a solution to that concern.
Well, then it's out of character with the rest of the neighborhood in the winter. But now in the summer, so.
So where, when you shovel that space now, where do you put the snow?
It goes out on the corner of the property. If you look at the upper right-hand corner picture, the snow gets plowed to the left, basically lengthwise of the driveway, and then it also gets plowed towards the tree that you see there. And the town actually will sometimes, I allow them to plow as well up to the tree, and then we push it back to the, essentially, if you look in the lower right-hand corner here, we plow it back to where the snow comes off of the roof. So basically where the garden is and up and in, push the snow back there so that there's good visibility when you come up to the stop sign on the corner. So I've given them full, ability. I said, plow it right up. I'm not concerned about the lawn itself in the winter as much as I am about the visibility on those corners. So that's how that's worked out. That also, the area there allows the plow, allows us to come around and basically remove the snow from the sidewalk there and push it over and then ultimately into the driveway and then lengthwise through the driveway. So I guess what I'm saying is regardless of whether there's a parking spot there or not, I would be plowing that area in the, it would certainly be plowing that area in the winter.
How long did you say you owned this building for?
I've owned it since 2004.
So, since you've owned it, did you say that more or less, and even prior to you owning it, that people have been parking in both of those spaces that you're proposing right now?
No, that is not correct. When I first purchased it, when I first purchased the property, they were parking at Price Chopper in the summer or in the winter, and then they were parking on the. Well, it was at that time when I first purchased it. Before I purchased it, I should say, the tenants lived there. They were an older couple with one car. They had a daughter that lived upstairs with one car, and they had another tenant that lived upstairs with one car. The house was also in substantial disrepair when I purchased it. The house is not in disrepair now. The house accommodates tenants that are, contributors to the neighborhood, if you will.
And it's 3 units, you said? 3 units?
Yes, it's 3 units. Yep, 1,300, and 1,000 square feet.
Right.
Yeah.
So how many parking spots is he required to have
4.
total?
Yeah.
1 for each one plus 1 for every 3?
Yep.
Is that it?
Unless he offers a rationale why more spaces are actually required.
Which is?
It's the tenants that I have had have, since the start,
Mostly have 2 cars?
have had two vehicles, and that has been a challenge since I have owned the property.
Gotcha.
So when I purchased the property, all floors were vacated at that time, and just through simple cleanup of the property, the tenants that were interested in the units have they've just been consistently 2 families, or excuse me, two working individuals.
I have to say, I don't have as much trouble with the parking off Central as I do with the parking in front of the house. I
Mhm.
just, I don't know, there's something that I just don't like about it. And when I walk by, as Mr. Reed Savers, it's not, nobody else parks in their front yard.
Mhm.
And you have gravel there instead of lawn. And I don't know, the compromise might be you can't park in front of the house except in the winter.
That was what I was thinking. I mean, I was thinking about that with respect to all the spots because the street really isn't that different than the proposed 2 spots on Central. And you maintain the character of lawns with, houses with lawn throughout the setback by doing that. I mean, it seems to me the applicant's got a reasonably difficult problem to solve in the wintertime. And, you know, those are not problems that we all experience. What do you guys think? Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to second that it is in fact a popular street for the kids to play in. There are very few recreational opportunities in the neighborhood. It would be a shame to take away one just to park more cars on the street.
Well, maybe the winter restriction should only be for the front spot. I mean, that's what you guys both felt, right?
My personal thought on the winter thing is, I think that's gonna, I don't think that's appropriate. I think, you know, if they either can have it or they can't, you know, that would be how I would look at it. I don't think the one on Prospect Street, I don't think that got conditioned to snow time only.
It did actually.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, it seems to be successful working that
Does
way.
it work for them over there?
Seems to. Yep.
I would concur with Kim about the, I'm not as offended by the Central Street part. Whether it said it doesn't seem as conspicuous or not, I'm not sure. I'm curious, on the Central Street side, could you push that back away from the road, the parking space?
Further than it's pictured here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or then you got a snow issue again.
No, well, that's a good point. Well, first of all,
Because it does look like it's
largest
just the
vehicle
opposite
possible.
Eve corner from the other side, basically, right?
But it is different. The snow does fall in this particular roof. The snow does fall back to about where you see the back of the truck and even closer to the house. I guess we don't have a great view of that, but there's more room than it appears, is what I would say, on that back side. And certainly the way the snow seems to come up, maybe there's a difference because it's the side of the house that the sun, really hits more. I think we get more icing on the east side of the house. That's a northeast area.
Northeast, right.
So I think you get more icing. So when it comes off,
Freezing
it
release,
shoots.
yeah.
This other one seems to melt off regular and it kind of drops when it comes. So perhaps I think that may be the difference.
I mean,
The vehicles can certainly be back further off the road.
I'm just asking. I'm not sure
Yeah.
that would accomplish any of the interest of the other board members, but I'm just,
Yeah,
I wondered if there was a way to mitigate that side to where that could be. I'd have to say myself, I concur with, you're touching the sidewalk on that front there. I'm curious, is that street one of the ones that the town does clear the sidewalk during the winter?
No, they do not.
Washington's
However,
not.
I typically will plow up the side, clear the sidewalk there. Like I said, we'll push it back and then they'll come through, and when they do the intersection, they'll push
But
back
I've seen
there.
that. I've done a few driveways before on Washington, and my recollection of the ones that I did, the sidewalk wasn't touched in front of them. So if this, I mean, and
Yeah,
I'm
they
not
don't do any
saying,
of the
I'm not
sidewalks.
trying to have a discussion about who should or shouldn't do sidewalks, but just to say that if it isn't done there, then you're carving the slot for that front car to park, and there's a serious berm of snow between you and the road in the winter there. You push everything from there, including the furrow from the road, up onto the lawn by your tree?
It's actually south of the tree. So from the parking
I'm not looking at
spot
your map, I'm just looking at your
Yep.
scale drawing.
at the scale drawing,
Yeah, so when you plow in the winter since 2004, you've plowed across the front of the building along the Washington Street side and pushed all that stuff from those 2 sidewalks, which I assume are existing?
No. From the Central Street, are you talking about the
No,
Central
Washington Street side. I'm talking
Okay.
about Washington Street.
On the
side.
Washington Street side, some of it goes over towards the tree. So if you take kind of a view from the center line of the tree
Yeah.
that's depicted here, some of it goes towards the tree, and I try to angle it back to the south there, and
On that
then
side, yeah.
and then some of it goes back the other
To the other
way,
side,
to the east.
by the propane tanks.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. Gotcha.
That's correct.
until you're stacked too high at both sides and
It's been a particular challenge the last couple of years, right?
last winter must have tested it, right?
Yes, it certainly does.
So do you have, your tenants each have 2 cars now per unit?
They do not right now. No, I have a tenant right now on the first floor that has 1 car. Yep.
And is the situation there where they have assigned spots?
No, and that's one of the big challenges with the assigned spots or just the parking end to end, right? They're doing the.
I mean, I would assume that, you know,
That's.
this
We go
unit
through a
could
lot
have
of
these 2
mediation.
spots so the husband and wife could move for each other and so on.
That's exactly. That
And
is.
So really, this spot in front of the house only becomes an issue in the winter because the snow falls off the roof onto that parking spot that normally a unit would have access to both of those spots.
Correct. That makes it very
So
difficult.
theoretically, we could say that you could just use that spot in the wintertime so that you didn't have to park and get the car damaged by the snow.
Right, the one in the front. Correct.
And you're gonna plow it anyway. So,
That's correct.
so
Yeah,
even if we said you can't park there, somebody's gonna park there because it's plowed.
I didn't think about that, but you're probably right. Yeah, but I would certainly be amenable to that. I mean, I think having seen the damage and incurred some of it myself, I would certainly be amenable to that approach.
I mean, I was just, you know, looking at your spot that you wanna have off Central Street and assuming that you would assign those 2 spots to 1 unit. And then the existing driveway, 2 spots to 1 unit, the other 2 spots to the other unit.
That's exactly what I would do.
And so 1 unit would
yeah.
lose 1 spot in the winter because of the snow ice damage.
Right,
So,
right.
So it sounds to me like we have a developing consensus, but correct me if I'm wrong, to have the Washington Street side proposed parking space be winter only. And do we define that by snow on the ground last time or by October 31st?
I think during the period of the parking ban is probably,
Okay. And
That's good.
the Central Street spots open year round. Am I right about that?
that's how I would
Yeah,
I would be comfortable with that.
I personally am not comfortable with that. I'm okay with the parking places on Central. It just, it takes away too much, I think, to have a car parked in front of the house parallel like that. I just, personally, I can't go along with the one in the front.
Okay. Well, then we don't have a consensus, but we do have a slim majority. And with all due respect, I think it's still appropriate to hold a vote if I'm correct about that. Okay. Sure. We can. Yeah, you want to move?
Yeah.
Make the motion to go into
Move
deliberative
to
session.
executive session, we have your office for a couple minutes.
Deliberative
it's
session.
deliberative.
Deliberative session, yeah.
Sure.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's 7:55. We're back on the record. So we had a brief discussion in deliberative session, and I think it's appropriate time to make a motion.
Move to approve 2015-107 with the conditions as discussed on the front parking in winter only.
And specifically fall in line with when parking ban is in effect.
So moved.
The conditions listed in the draft.
All right. Okay, so moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? I didn't ask for public comment before. I assume nobody's here for this application, right? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, and all those opposed? You mean nay?
Nay.
The decision is 4-1. You need 4 votes for an approval, so you have an application. Your application is approved, provided you use those grass pavers that you have in the application, and don't use that front spot in the winter. Have a nice night.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. The next application is Panda Properties LLC, and there are 3 applications: 2015-94, 2015-116, 2015-170. I'm sorry, 117. And our vote on 94 theoretically could be dispositive of the other 2, so I think it would be appropriate to take that one up first and by itself.
Which one is that, Jim?
94 is the determination of the zoning administrator that the so-called T sign is damaged by more than 1/3 of its value. Mr. Hasselbach, can you just give me a second to get my papers squared away here? Looks like you need one too. Tell me when you're ready. Everybody ready on the board? Okay, Mr. Hasselbach, I know it's been your practice in the past to sometimes ask for a continuance when we have less than the full board. You're okay to go forward now?
Yes, there was a email from Mr. Bannon about that, and under due consideration, we think it makes sense to go forward and get this resolved.
Okay. So having said that, could you tell us about your appeal?
Well, I would like to first start by asking, has everybody got a copy of our memorandum of law, including the 2 prior decisions on this particular sign? If not, I have extra copies.
I don't think that I have.
It came in your first package.
The first package is that.
Well, somehow, I don't know why, but I haven't seen it. Do you have an extra copy, please?
Yes, I certainly do.
I apologize.
Anybody, let's make sure I get this. Okay. Is anyone else missing a copy of my memorandum and the 2 decisions? I'm happy to give you all copies.
I hate to do this. Can we take a 5-minute recess so I can read this before you make your presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. Is anybody else missing the copy of my memorandum and the 2 former decisions?
All right.
No.
And I apologize to everybody in the audience or you, the one person in the audience, for doing this, but
No, I think it makes sense for people.
I'm going to take a brief recess at 7:58 simply so I can read the appellant's memorandum.
Yeah, let people refresh themselves if they're ready before I.
Okay, it's 8:10 p.m. We're back on the record. I apologize. Now, having reviewed appellant's memorandum, please tell us about your appeal.
Okay, I would like to have my witness testify and explain what she knows of the facts, so that you'll have a proper factual background. This is on my left here is Catherine Chen. So, Catherine, would you please tell the board how you became involved with the sign, what your position is, and how you became involved with this issue?
My name is Catherine Chen. I work at Panda North as a manager, start October 1st, 2013. Since I started working the first year, we not doing anything for the renovation for the building stuff. The second year, 2014, we start trying to update the building and try to look nice. As you see, the building's a little problem, the parking lot, everything. So we try to upgrade this year. We planned it last year, but because the Panda Property LLC building owner have a language issue, so I try to involve and help them to do the job.
So were you saying that the owners weren't involved because they had trouble with the English language, and that's why they drafted you?
Yes.
And so can you tell us what it is that you did with respect to the sign?
Okay, they Star was doing the project at now it's 2014, in the winter time, they want me to do the job, to find the people to fix the sign, but you know the winter time is very busy. And plus the sign is kind of that high, it's not easy to find, not all sign company can do the project too. So it takes a little time. So my first quote coming in February 2nd, 2015.
And that's this document here?
Yes.
I'd like to offer this document in evidence. This is the quote that was received, and Catherine Chen has identified it, and I have copies for everyone. So if you just bear with me a second, I'll give people copies, and we will ask.
Can you tell us who gave her the quote?
What's that?
Can you tell us who gave her the quote?
That was, the first quote was McCarthy Signs, and the date on it is February 2nd, 2015. Okay, and I will give everyone a copy.
From that quote, you can see we're not just doing the sign, also the other stuff. You know, they want to look nice for the.
Of the items in this list of this exhibit, maybe I should refer to it as Exhibit 1. What part of it has to do with the sign?
The first three things involve the upper sign, yeah.
And-
So
and-
everything below
Below is something else.
the light bulbs, that refers to,
Oh, the light.
Different
The
signs.
first four, 1, 2, 3, 4, first four, because
Okay.
plus installation fee too.
and the bottom three refer to the other signs
Other
closer to Putney
other
Road?
sign, yeah, other two signs. One's
Okay.
the
Well,
face the street, yeah.
Right, and the canopy you also, right?
Canopy, yeah, in the front of the restaurant too. So
Oh, I
we're
see.
trying to make the place look nicer. But
All right, so you got this quote from McCarthy Signs.
yes,
What was the next step that you tried to take with respect to doing work on the sign?
I'm looking for other quote, other companies' quote.
Can you
To
tell
do
the
the
board
project too.
tell the board what you did with respect to that?
Well,
Did you have some difficulties in finding contractors?
yeah, I have a difficulty finding contract because of the height of the sign. So it take a little longer than what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting I would have that trouble. I thought sign is sign, you know.
Okay.
So I don't have experience for that.
All right, and did there come a time when you had a quote with respect to the sign from another company?
Yeah, I do have another quote from the other company.
All right, and I'll show you this document, which we'll mark as Exhibit 2, and ask you if you could tell us what that is.
The quotes come back in the May 23rd. It's we were thinking to maybe to put the Panda North on it instead of T, because a lot of people asking why you have a T there. You're Panda North. So we told them the history about a steakhouse sign before. It's a lot of people probably, you guys know the stuff, what happened before, yeah, previously.
All right, so
Could I
this,
ask a quick question before
Yes.
we go on? I'm sorry, it's just for my own mathematical understanding. The first four items on the exhibit you were just referring to, the McCarthy estimate, they don't seem like they add up to either of the two proposed costs for improvements. Am I misunderstanding something?
well, what we've asked for in
All of that adds
the,
up to the total. All of that, on this estimate, the total reflects all of those things. Part of them are, I think what you're trying to show is the actual repair amount to that sign in question, is that correct?
Yes,
And just so that we can be clear on that, could you help us break out which part of that is reflected by this combination of numbers?
first
in this?
four,
The first four.
for the top four. Number 4 is installation, and the top 3 are the parts.
The challenge I'm trying to resolve in my own mind is in the application, I thought that the estimated cost of the improvement to simply restore the quote-unquote T sign was $1,580. And this looks like it's a bit more.
The reason this is a bit more is because we're not putting up the panels. Some of the panels were saved, but they're a little bit
Okay,
not as good quality.
okay, there's those first four quotes, it's like brand new, but we do have top two, okay, the sign had two sides, but have 4 panels. But the top one's still there, but we want brand new, look nicer. So
Okay.
this quote is kind of like 4-piece there.
So the 1,580 is
It's
only
only-
if you
only if
replace
you-
the stuff that is
The bottom,
currently
that's
broken.
it, whatever is broken right now.
The top part of the McCarthy estimate would be to take
Everything new.
everything out and replace it to look the same as it is.
Yes,
Okay.
Just with new pieces, new bulbs
piece.
and new plastic.
yes, that's
Right.
it, but same color,
Yeah.
same letter, nothing changed.
And lettered TEA.
TEA.
Right, gotcha, okay. Now you got a second estimate that's lettered Panda North?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, and this, what's the difference between this estimate and the prior one? I mean, what's the difference in the sign that this estimate refers to?
It's the same one. You just say it's Panda North.
White one?
It's a white, the second one is a white background instead of yellow background. We have yellow background right now.
Right,
And the second one says Panda on it.
and for our,
Attorney Hesselbeck, if you're laying foundation for exhibits, you can ask leading questions. I don't think that's.
yeah, basically what we're saying in this quote is that under the statute, under the ordinance, we're allowed to change the background. If we have more letters up there, in order to make it more visible, it was decided that it would be better to have a white background because then it would be more visible. It would also be more attractive. So that's why we have this proposal as an alternate. It's more expensive, and we'd like to show people,
Yeah.
we'll give everybody a copy.
Is this also from McCarthy Signs?
No,
No,
this
it's
is,
from another one.
Who made this estimate?
this is from Neopa, which is Ralph Randall, who is present today, who could talk about his sign, his proposal. So I'll give everybody a copy of this one.
Okay. So I'm just going to refer to this as the Neopa exhibit. For the record.
Well, actually, maybe we should call it Exhibit 2.
Do you want to call it two? That's fine.
I'll give you the right one there.
Yes.
Okay, now, so
Now, is this exactly the same as far as material replacement? Except that the letters would be different?
Yeah, it will
And
be
the colors
Panda
would be
North and
different?
white background instead of yellow. The one we have right now is yellow.
But the physical materials, it's this Lexan material.
Yes.
And is it unusual that this doesn't include bulb replacement? Or is that
Actually,
just?
bulb is not. It's not broken. We can just give to him. Then he can just put it in there. It's a YouTube. As you can see, it's on the first one you have. It's a 48-inch U-shape light bulb. You can order online too.
Okay. So there might be something like a $600 cost for the bulbs, not included.
Okay, that quote is replacing all of them, the 640, but you can see each unit price costs $40. We only have 2 missing, and this part you can order
Okay.
from online too.
Okay, so there's likely $80 in additional materials not accounted for in this number?
Yep.
well, let me ask Mr. Randall, in your proposal for the sign, does that include the bulbs, or would the bulbs be extra?
The bulbs would be extra.
Okay,
And is it correct that 2 bulbs are $80?
$80. Yeah, right?
Give or take.
Yes.
Okay.
If you need, I can show you a website I have for that.
His expertise is more than enough before this board, as long as we're in range. I think we're all happy.
All right, now, did there come a time when you got another proposal from Neola?
Yeah.
And can you tell us what that proposal is?
The third one proposal is that because we received a violation, okay, you see the first proposal in February 2015?
No,
Yeah.
this is the McCarthy
And
proposal.
yeah, and second one, its proposal is May 23rd.
Yeah.
And in between those time, we receive violation from the town.
Right, so this third proposal you got was for the purpose of showing what?
To showing that we are not violate.
Right, but, all right, what, in this proposal, there's an expense, what's the expense for?
$41,975.
This one here, this one here.
Yeah, 71.
All right, so did you get a proposal for what the replacement value is for the whole sign?
Yes,
And is that what this is?
yes,
And that was received from Mr. Randall?
yes.
All right, so I'd like to, because one of the issues proposed by this case is whether the damage to the sign is more than 1/3 of the replacement value of the sign. So Mr. Randall here has given us a quote for what it would cost to replace the whole sign. And I would like to offer that in evidence as Exhibit 3.
No,
They don't give away signs these days, do they?
Before we get to Exhibit 3, I have the same kind of question about Exhibit 2 that I did for Exhibit 1, which is, on the application, the estimated cost is $7,095. The Exhibit 2 proposal is for $8,940.
I can explain that.
If you could explain the discrepancy.
We had the 6,295, but we weren't sure at the time what the installation cost would be.
I see.
So we estimated it, and then later on, Mr. Randall has given us a more complete accounting of what it would cost to install it. So now, your position is that the replacement cost of the entire sign is $71,000,
Yes.
right? And to put the sign up back the way it was, with a yellow background, you have a quote for $4,000-something.
Yes,
And to put it back with a more attractive and nicer white background would be
8,000.
8,000.
Yeah, almost 9,000, yeah.
Close to 9,000. So is your saying then that it wasn't damaged more than 1/3 of its replacement value?
Yes.
And of the proposals, which is the one that you at Panda North would prefer that they allow you to use? In other words, as between the white background and the yellow background for the lettering, which one would you prefer?
I think the white background is more attractive and more clear.
I have a couple questions. I'm sorry, Mr. Randall, right? Exhibit 3 is your proposal to replace every single piece of that sign from the ground to the top, right?
Exhibit 3,
Yeah, this is what
Okay.
I have.
that's correct.
And is this the least expensive way to completely recreate what is there now?
Least expensive
Yeah.
with the complexity of the engineering and the height of that particular post system. This is the best you get.
Okay. I noticed that the pylon says it's designed for a height of 50 feet. I assume that just refers to how high it could conceivably go?
Yeah, this sign is approximately 42 feet to 45 feet in height.
Okay.
So whenever you're in an area near a river and the wind factors that are involved in that, it has to be designed not only below the ground but above the ground to be able to take the wind and whatever else the weather might throw at us.
Could I follow up on that? Mr. Randall, you had occasion to view the sign, I take it? And-
Yes.
And in the current state of the sign, is it safe for the public?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We've had some near sheer winds here in the last several months. And that sign has not budged. In fact, when I looked at the straight line of the sign can below, it has not budged, bellied or anything.
All right, so the sign, your conclusion and expert testimony is that the sign is not unsafe? Am I right?
No.
It's not unsafe? Let me say that. Is the sign safe?
Yes,
Okay. Now, how long have you been in the sign business?
30 years.
And you build these things yourself, you do the calculations and all that,
Yeah.
and you've been doing that for 30 years as well.
If I could just make, pardon me, one of the things that's creating the problem with the sign right now is it needs retainers.
For those panels? you
That's
mean?
correct.
Right.
Retainers
Yeah.
hold the sign panel in place. The retainers over the years have been removed and put back and removed and put back because of changing bulbs. So when you take a screw in, you take a screw out, the hole is not as receptive to the grab capability of the screw. It's a simple.
Is there a better design for the new ones?
No, what you do, one of the problems when you replace bulbs and move the signs around, typically something that high, all new screw holes should happen. You don't use the same screw holes. Or you use a bigger threaded screw to go in there.
Right.
So it's a simple thing. It's more common sense than anything else.
I believe that sign predates your experience.
Yes, it does. However, I saw it go up.
Really?
Yep, I remember when it went up.
One last thing in our case we would like to do is, everybody has a copy of the two prior decisions, and I would like to offer the two prior decisions in evidence as exhibits 4 and 5, because one of them basically says that the T-sign is a pre-existing non-conforming sign and can continue as is, and the other one says that the two signs can also continue. So I believe that they're relevant to the violation, which raises those issues. So I would like to offer those in as exhibits.
Exhibits 1 through 5 are deemed admitted.
I don't quite understand what these proposals cover. I'm looking at 2 white panels for $62.95 on one, and then I'm looking at something to build new sign cabinets for $24,655. What is under the $26,000? Why is that so much different?
Yeah, that's right. Why is that?
No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. The only thing I could say is this: if you're remodeling a home, it's one price. If you're building a new home, it's another price. And it's dramatically different. If you are remodeling or refurbishing a sign, it's going to be a whole lot less money than to meet the code and meet the UL specs of a brand new sign. And that's where you get into your money. You have to also, with some of the new engineering and stamped engineering that takes place with the sign, the price drives big time because there has to be certain elements in the sign. Otherwise, you couldn't put it up.
So your quote for $71,975 is the replacement value of this sign.
That's correct.
The sign disappeared and you had to replace it. That's what it would cost.
In 2015,
Right.
not 1962.
Well, I guess my question would be in regard to all of this. If the sign were up there and working the way it is, what would it be worth?
I don't think that's a fair question, quite frankly.
Well, are you capable of appraising the sign or just quoting what it costs to build them?
Well,
I don't know if that's.
I think that's one and the same question here.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Because if it's Because quite frankly, if whether it's a sign, whether the sign is, a stick with a stop sign on it, or that sign right there, if I'm the owner of it, to me, the value of that thing is if a storm wipes it off the face of the earth, the value of it's what it's gonna take to replace it.
I want to recognize this.
Not the adjusted insurance replacement, depreciated whatever value, because I can't replace it for that, whether it's a sign or my car or my house.
If I could just say one word on that, is that the ordinance.
I'm sorry, I want to let him.
I just want to clarify on the code for one moment. It doesn't speak of what the depreciated value of the sign is. It talks only of the replacement value for the damage calculation.
Okay.
So we should base it on the cost of a new sign, not the depreciated value of whatever sign is there now.
Exactly what I was going to say. So
Okay.
we're in agreement on that, yes.
Okay. So that's the only question would be whether the planning department's construction of the definition to only include the display portion of the sign is a reasonable interpretation of section 4502H.
If I may, I would like to put one glitch on that, and that is the statute that says you can keep a pre-existing sign says you can keep a pre-existing sign, and if the sign is damaged more than 1/3 of its replacement value, you can't. If they use the word sign to be the whole sign and the supports, that you can keep it, in the same exact paragraph, they also use the word sign to say whether it's 1/3 damaged or not 1/3. So the sign has to be, in our opinion, the whole sign, including all the supports, because it's in the same paragraph, and you wouldn't have two different definitions of sign in the same paragraph. But that being said, even if the violation is construed as being correct, that it's only the wording part of the sign, if you look at the value of the wording part of the sign, it's 8,900, and in the replacement part, if you look at the top part of the replacement part, which is the so-called cabinet, which is the wording part of the sign, that's 24,000, and then if you look down below the installation, the bottom one is 3,700. So you're up around 28, 29,000. So the point being that even if you were to use just the sign part of it, it's still not damaged over 1/3 of its replacement value. So either way, we still think that it's not damaged more than 1/3, and we don't think the violation should be upheld, and we hope that the board will favorably look on application to fix the sign up one way or the other. As you heard from Ms. Chen, the people who run the restaurant have been here since 1988. They feel that they're a valuable part of the community. They want to continue, and they want to try to fix their place up and have it look attractive and be a credit to the community. And they're willing to work with the board in all respects with respect to that.
Well, let's just say for the purpose of argument that we agree with you that the sign, for the purpose of this statute, refers to the whole sign, and thus either method of repair is far less than 1/3. What authority do we have to allow the applicant to change the wording and the color? Mr. Bannon, I think is going to answer my question.
Sure. I think the court ruling was this is a changeable copy sign, and that from time to time the copy has in fact been changed.
So let's keep it to the color then.
And I think the code also says that non-conforming signs, you can change the background
Change the background.
as you like. So I think both of those applications. Yes, the only reasons those applications were turned down was because the sign is damaged and has to be discontinued.
It's a very polite way to tell me to read more carefully, Mr. Bannon. Okay. I'd like to enter deliberative session to discuss this, but I don't want to prematurely stop this before the applicant has gotten their full say. I thought you were done. Are you done, Mr. Hasselbeck?
Yes, I agree with Mr. Bannon that there is a provision that allows you to change the background. And the rationale behind it is if we're having more dense letters on the black and yellow combination, it kind of blurs into green, whereas if it was white and more letters, not only would it be more readable, it would be more attractive, and the Panda North people hope that you will grant that option.
Oh, that reminds me, we should note that we received testimony from another party by email, and I've not had that come across my desk since I've been the chair. Do I have to take an action to get that into the record? I mean, it's not sworn. I didn't know we could take this type of testimony.
Well, we can't take written testimony, so,
We can?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna note, and I'm only doing this for the record, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about at the moment, but we received some written testimony from John Cannon supporting changing the sign to repin. Anyhow, if there are any questions, I'd like to get those to the applicant before we go to deliberative session, but it is my intent to move to go to deliberative session at some point. So what do you guys think?
Can I hear him somehow address whatever is the differentiation that Brian is referring to regarding damage? What is the when you say damage,
It has to be removed.
what is that, how is that different from what he's talking about?
Well, I think the problem here is definitional. Mr. Hesback is not reading the entire code to determine what the sign is. He's reading sign to be every element of the sign, including its support elements. And I think, in fact, that's not the case. The board has dealt with this question before, for instance, with gasoline canopies, whether the support element for that sign, the entire canopy, should be counted as a sign, and has said no. The sign is actually the textual element or logo that draws attention to the business. And this is derived from the definition of sign itself.
Of course, the canopy has a secondary purpose still.
Right.
Or a primary purpose in the sign. is the
Or a
second.
primary purpose. I just mean a
So, an auxiliary purpose.
Sure.
And in this
It would be
case,
a
the post
canopy.
would be pointless if you didn't have a sign on top of it.
Right.
That's true, but the question is, if you took away the sign, and again, I'm saying that the definition is the portion that says T, you'd have two posts, and would those two posts attract business? Would that attract attention to the business? Again, which is the definition of a sign in our ordinance. I would say no, they'd just be two posts, so they're not part of the sign. I think if you look a little bit further, it says, if you look at area of the sign, it says you don't count structure, so it makes that differentiation between the sign and the structure, unless the structure itself is lit up or some other way attracting attention to the building. You also have it under removing damaged signs. You have remove the sign and the supporting structures. So it's really quite consistent in saying you have the sign and you have structures. And they're not one common thing.
Could I respond to that?
if you're done.
Sure.
I think Mr. Bannon is conflating two separate items. One is when you're considering what you're going to put in the sign, they talk about the area of the sign and they don't talk about the structures. But in the part about whether you can replace it, they clearly are talking about the whole sign, because if they say you can keep the sign if it's grandfathered, that's clearly the whole sign. And the same paragraph says you can keep it if 1/3 is damaged, that's clearly the whole sign. And Mr. Bannon talked about the definition of a sign. The definition of a sign specifically says it includes the structure. So the definition of the sign means that it does include the structure. And in fact, when a sign is obsolete, you have to remove the structure as part of the sign.
Well, it doesn't say, it says a sign is the structure.
It defines sign as being blah, 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 including structure. So the structure is part of the sign, is what we're
I
saying.
thought it defines a sign as a structure which does so-and-so. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, I'm only clarifying the language. I think it's 4511E.
You want to, what was it?
Do you mind, Mr. Chairman?
No, I just want to
I
make
find
sure-
it, I have been before many boards before. I find, pardon me, Mr. Bannon, I find your description of a canopy not quite correct. That is a structural piece of construction to cover and protect those that are underneath it as well as the pumps. The auxiliary part of that, in fact, when canopies first came out, they didn't put signs on them. So then they found out that's a good place to put a sign. So it's an auxiliary, secondary, third area that they can do certain things. And a sign cannot be a sign when I sell a sign unless I have structure. So it is one and the same element. It's so much different than a canopy, quite frankly. Pardon me, the analogy was a little tough for me.
No, it's fine. I had a somewhat similar thought. I want to let Mr. Bannon respond to a couple of different counter arguments here by the applicant side.
Sure. Well, again, I laid this argument out, I think, fairly clearly in the violation notice, and again, it's definitional. Mr. Hesback is saying that any non-conforming grandfathered sign that is destroyed or damaged to the extent that the cost of repair or restoration exceeds 1/3 the replacement value, etc. Use this sign in two different ways, and of course, that's presuming that you accept his definition of what sign is, and I'm not. Again, it's fairly consistent that it treats structure and signage differently. And this has also come up in court cases for other signs in town, where there's been a non-conforming sign, the sign has been replaced, the structure has remained the same because the structure isn't actually counted towards the non-conformance.
Were they freestanding signs?
Yes.
And was the structure similarly a posts or beams or that kind of thing?
Yes.
Which, do you remember the name of the decision, or can you describe to us the nature of those signs?
America's Best is one where they reduce the size of the sign while maintaining the same structural elements.
Do you recall when that was from?
I don't, James.
Okay, my druthers are to go to deliberative session and nobody's got any more questions. Well, unless the applicant has something else you want to say in response to that. And you're content too?
I would ask that the board just set aside that last argument based on previous decisions, because I haven't entered those.
I'm not going to set that aside right now because it might be worth researching, but at this point, I just want to go into deliberative session. So, you made the motion. I rudely interrupted you, I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're back on the record. I just had a couple of additional questions for the appellant's expert, if you wouldn't mind. Exhibit 3, the most costly estimate. Let's say you were to leave the poles, okay?
Yep.
But replace the cabinet, the electrical work, everything from the top of those poles up. I assume that the 2 pylon posts structurally designed that cost $38,500, that's out, right?
Correct.
And I would assume that excavating and concrete is out?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Before I would put up 2 cans, I would have to have the structure rechecked for strength.
Okay.
Recertified, right?
Recertified. I would not go up there with 2 more sign cans on my watch.
Sure.
To install unless, so there is a cost factor in there.
Can you give me a ballpark cost for that? This is the danger of being an expert witness.
Probably in the $5,000 to $6,000 range.
Okay. Would excavating and concrete be deleted?
Again, that is another area that I would have to do a small bit of excavating to make sure that everything is copacetic.
To be reduced somewhat?
Yeah.
Maybe by half or more or less?
Half would be appropriate.
Okay, so we'll call that 1,100. Engineering stamped. I don't know what that refers to. You
Yeah.
just tell me if it would stay or go.
For liability purposes, if you have an engineer that is,
Oh, I understand now.
okay, I could take the liability on myself, but boy,
Okay, but I mean, if the job was to replace the
Yeah.
cabinet, though, you would hire an engineer.
oh, yeah.
And you'd get it stamped. Would the cost be any
That's right.
different because the scope of the job was less?
Yeah. Excuse me?
Would the cost to get the engineer stamp of approval be any less
No.
because the scope was less
No.
if you weren't
No.
dealing with the post?
If
And
I
I-
might say, Mr. Chairman, in the city of Keene, I can't do anything unless it's up in the air. It's got to be engineered, it's got to have a stamp.
Sure. And I assume that the bucket truck cost would still be there because you'd have to
That's it.
weld the thing
Yeah.
on, but it would be slightly less because you wouldn't be installing the poles?
No, that's the same type of thing.
Okay.
Because you want to keep something in mind. The post, if you read it, it says installed and reinforced cage and welded.
Mhm.
That says a whole unit.
Right.
So the bucket truck is separate, doing with new wiring
Oh,
and
I
so
see.
on and so forth. And if I were to put new cans up there, I would have to run, right now, there's a wire that goes up there, but I would have to put it in new conduit and so on and so
Sure.
forth. I would not.
So under any circumstances, if you're replacing the entire cabinet unit but leaving the poles, you're over $30,000, clearly.
Oh, yeah. yeah,
Correct.
Yeah.
So the board went into deliberative session, and we concluded that we need not determine at this hearing whether a sign is the posts or not the posts. I think we all feel that that definition is vague enough that the arguments of the zoning administrator are somewhat compelling, and the arguments of the appellant are somewhat compelling. And rather than get into the rule of lenity or absurd conclusions of statutory construction, we're all in agreement that if the cabinet cost is indeed over $30,000, then the proposal of the appellant would be consistent with the rule, which is to say that it would be acceptable as less than 1/3 of that cost. Accordingly, and if anybody's changed their mind, you let me know. But based on the testimony of the expert witness, we conclude that the cabinet cost is indeed sufficient under either interpretation of the rule to support the proposed improvements of the sign under section 4502H for non-conforming signs. I'll hear a motion
So moved.
to reverse the decision of the zoning administrator in application 2015-94.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now, the other two questions.
No, that's for 94.
That's for 94.
Okay.
Because of that decision, if we'd said no, it would have moved 116 and 117, however, they now are right. And that is whether to allow the applicant. The zoning administrator's denial is now reversed, and just given the fact that this is before us, it's appropriate for us to determine whether the applicant may change the lettering and the color. We discussed both of those things in deliberative session and reviewed the applicable law offered by the appellant, and have concluded that both of those changes are acceptable under the present law. So I'll hear a motion to reverse the denial of 116 and 117 and allow the proposed change in color to white and change in lettering to Panda North consistent with the applicant's application.
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
Now, question.
you're in discussion. Go ahead.
Is it necessary? If I heard them correctly, they would prefer to go with the option B, if you will, white background and Panda North versus T. So does that make even voting on one of these, on 116 move?
Yeah, I think you should reverse both if you think they're
His
both in
denial
error.
is still the record.
Okay.
He's
okay.
denied changing it from T, and he's denied changing it from the color. It was based on
Okay.
his legal conclusion that we already reversed, but they're still denied. until we take an action.
So if we reverse both of those, does that then leave them able to complete, or do they have to come
Yes.
again? They don't have to come again to go put that Panda North of the way background, do they?
By reversing their denial, we're essentially
Approving.
accepting an application that wouldn't normally come before us
Gotcha.
for those changes.
As submitted by them.
They submitted the
And that's
white
what they want,
background.
right? That's
white
what you want?
background.
Yeah, that's white background and
Yeah.
Panda North out, that's what we want, the final, if that's possible.
Any other questions before we vote? All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll hear a motion to adjourn. No, I'm sorry, member of the public, did you want to speak? No, okay. I'll hear a motion to adjourn. Okay, any second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Have a nice night, folks.
Thank you.
Stay safe.